My sister stole my wedding husband and got pregnant, but when she tried to move into our newly bought house, she was in for a surprise. I always thought betrayal would feel like a sudden punch to the gut. Instead, it crept up slowly, wrapping around my throat like a silk scarf until I couldn't breathe. The day I caught them together, I wasn't even supposed to be home. My name is Ivy, and I was supposed to be picking out flower arrangements for my wedding, but a migraine had forced me to reschedule, and I returned to find my sister Sophie's car in our driveway. Strange, since she should have been at work, the front door was unlocked. I heard giggling from upstairs my bedroom. My feet felt heavy as I climbed each step, my heart already knowing what. My mind refused to accept Jamie. Sophie's voice drifted through the crack in the door. We should tell her soon. I know baby after the wedding. Okay, we'll figure it out. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. There they were, my fiancé and my sister, tangled in my sheets, the same sheets Jamie and I had picked out together at Bed Bath & Beyond. Last month, Ivy Sophie scrambled to cover herself, but Jai just sat there. Frozen. Oh God, this isn't? I mean, we were going to, what? My voice sounded. Foreign, highly calm. Wait until after the wedding to tell me you've been sleeping with my fiancé Jimmy finally found his voice. Ivy, please. We didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. I laughed, actually laughed. How long? Sophie started crying 3 months. And I'm pregnant. The room spun 3 months while I'd been planning our wedding, picking out china patterns and writing my V. They'd been planning their own future. Get out. I whispered when neither moved. I grabbed JK's clothes from the floor and threw them at him. Get out. They dressed quickly, Sophie sobbing the entire time. Is stood in the doorway, blocking their exit the ring. Jamie blinked with the engagement ring. Give it back. He slipped it off my finger, his touch making my skin crawl as they shuffled. Past me, Sophie reached for my arm. Ivy, please, we need to talk about this. I jerked away. Don't touch me. Ever again. The next few days passed in a blur. My mother called, constantly leaving voicemails. That grew increasingly frustrated Ivy. You need to come home. Sophie's devastated. She needs her sister right now. I finally answered on the 4th day she needs me. Are you serious, sweetheart? These things happen? Sophie and Jamie, they're in love. Real love. And with the baby coming? Stop, my voice cracked. Just stop, we having a family dinner tonight, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. Everyone will be there, we need to discuss the situation like adults. I showed up against my better judgment. The dining room felt suffocating. Sophie and Jamie sitting. Together, my mother hovering anxiously, my father staring at his plate. We getting married next month? Sophie announced, her hand protectively over her stomach. A small ceremony. Nothing fancy, my mother beamed, isn't it? Wonderful, yuk be an Aunt Ivy. I stood. Up so quickly, my chair toppled backward. Wonderful. My sister sleeps with my fiancé, gets pregnant. And that's wonderful now, Ivy. My father finally spoke. What's done is done. We need to move forward as a family. It grabbed my purse. You want to know what family does. Family protects each other. Family doesn't steal your happiness and expect you to celebrate their betrayal. Sophie started crying again. She'd always been good at that. Please, Ivy. I love him. We love each other. I looked at them. All my sister's tears, Jim's guilty face, my parents' pleading eyes in that moment. Something inside me hardened. They wanted me to forgive and forget, to play the supportive sister and daughter. Instead, I walked to the door, pausing only to say, congratulations on your perfect little family. I hope you're all very happy together. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with messages I wouldn't read. They thought this was the end. Poor Ivy running away to lick her wounds. But they were wrong. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I pulled into my best friend Eric's driveway, my hand steady on the wheel. For the first time in days, he opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. I need your help, I whispered against his shoulder. Anything I want. To buy a house, I pulled back to meet his confused gaze. Their dream house specifically, and I know exactly how to do it 6 months can change everything. I sat in Craig's office watching him review the quarterly reports I'd prepared. My mentor's eyebrows rose higher with each page. Ivy, these numbers are exceptional. He sat down the papers. You've doubled your client portfolio since spring. I smiled, thinking of the sleepless nights and endless coffee runs that had gotten me here. Thank you. I've been focused. Focused is an understatement. The boards noticed there's talk of a promotion. My phone buzzed, another ignored text from Sophie. I switched it to silent without. Phone, he in trouble. Ivy, big trouble. What kind of trouble? Gambling debts he's been betting on sports games. Losing big, that's why they couldn't get the house loan. I leaned against the wall. Does Sophie know no Huns telling everyone they chose different house because it's better for the baby? Eric ran a hand through his hair. This changes things, right? Changes what your plan. I mean, they're already suffering. Maybe that's enough. I thought about my mother's voice messages, all about how Sophie needed support. How blessed they were, how it needed to move on about Jim's hand on my sister's stomach at the restaurant. The same hand that used to hold mine. No, I said it's not enough that night. I drove past their current apartment. The lights were on, shadows moving behind curtains. They looked happy, normal. Like they hadn't destroyed someone else's life to build their own. My phone rang. Alana, before you say no, she said when I answered. Hear me out. Family brunch Sunday. Just you and me and okay. Yes, Sophie, and your mom will be there. But so will I, running interference. Please. I hate being stuck between everyone. Is I'd fine? 1 hour Sunday arrived too quickly. I walked into the cafe to find Sophie. Already crying. These hormones, she sniffled. As I sat down, I'm just so happy you came. My mother beamed. See, this is what family does. We come together. Ilana caught my eye and mouthed, sorry. So Sophie wiped her eyes. The new house is perfect. The owners accepted our offer right away. Jamie says, it's meant to be. When do you move in? I asked, knowing the answer. 3 weeks just in time to set up the nursery before I get too big. She pulled out her phone. Want to see the photos? The previous owners are doing some renovations before we move in. I looked at the pictures. My house, my renovations. Lovely. We thinking of calling her Ivy? Sophie said suddenly. After you to show, there are no hard feelings. The cafe went silent. Even my mother looked uncomfortable. No, I said, quietly, you don't get to do that. But you don't get to steal my life and then name your baby after me, like it makes everything okay. Sophie's lower lip trembled. I thought you'd be honored. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly. You want to honor me? Try not sleeping with my fiancé. Next time Ivy me mother hissed, people are staring. Let them stare. I grabbed my purse. I'm done pretending everything's fine. Alana followed me outside. That was intense. It's about to get more intense. I showed her the contractor's schedule on my phone. They start tomorrow. The renovation that Sophie thinks the sellers are doing exactly. She studied me for a long moment. You know this won't make you feel better, right? Maybe not. I watched through the window as Sophie cried on our mother's shoulder. But it'll make them feel worse and right. Then that was all that mattered. Alana's birthday party felt like walking into a minefield. The backyard was filled with familiar faces, all pretending not to watch me. As I navigated through the crowd, Eric squeezed my hand reassuringly. We can leave anytime, he whispered. Not yet. I spotted Jai by the drinks table checking his phone with a worried expression. This is getting interesting. Sophie waved from her seat of honor, surrounded by gift bags full of baby items. Trust her to hijack someone else's birthday party. Ivy, come feel the baby kick. I'm good. I grabbed a glass of wine, watching Jamie slip away to make another phone call. Ileana appeared beside me. Hyun's been doing that all afternoon, Sophie. Thinks he's handling work stuff. Bookie stuff more? Likely. I muttered what? Nothing, I forced. A smile as my mother approached. Ivy, darling, Sophie's about to open the presents. Come sit with us. Actually, I raised my voice slightly. I'd love to hear more about the house. So, Sophie, their renovations must be almost done. Sophie brightened. Oh my God, yes, the contractors have been amazing. They're painting the nursery this gorgeous shade of lavender. Contractors. Jamie interrupted, returning from his call. His face had gone pale. What contractors? The ones doing the renovations before we move in? Sophie frowned. You said the sellers arranged everything. Jimmy tugged at his collar. Right. Of course, I sipped my wine, watching him squirm. He hadn't arranged. Anything could have, since he didn't own the house. I wondered how long he could keep up the LI show everyone. The nursery photos. Sophie urged. Jim's phone rang again. Sorry, I need to take this? I followed him around the corner of the house, staying just close enough to hear, I know I'm late on the payment. He hissed into the phone. The house fell through. Okay, but I've got another plan. No, please, just give me 2 more weeks problems. He stepped into view. He jumped, ending the call. Jesus, Ivy, were you spying on me? Karma's a funny thing, isn't it? I leaned against the wall. 1 minute, you're on top of the world. The next? What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I smiled, just thinking about how quickly things can change. Houses slip away, debts pile. Up his eyes narrowed. What do you know? I know Sophie would be devastated to learn about your gambling. Almost as devastated as I was when there you are. Sophie waddled around the corner. What are you two talking about? The house, I said smoothly. Jamie was just telling me about all the special features, the bay window, the vintage fireplace, the original hardwood floors. Isn't it perfect? Sophie beamed. We so lucky the master bedroom has this amazing crown molding that's being replaced. I cut in Jim's head, snapped up what? Oh, you didn't know the contractors are replacing all the crown molding and the hardwood floors, and that vintage fireplace gone by Thursday. Sophie's face fell. But we chose that house because of those features. Jamie, you said nothing was being changed. He shot me a panicked look. There must be some mistake. No mistake? I pulled out my phone, showing them the contractor's latest photos. See, they're making good progress? But why would the sellers? Sophie's voice trailed off as she studied the images. Wait, that's not Jamie. That's not our house. Of course. It is, he said quickly. It's just the angle. No, look at the address in the background. She zoomed in on one photo. That's the Victorian. We lost. Why do you have renovation photos of a house? We don't know. I watched the color drain from Jay's face. As his house of cards began to collapse, someone else bought it. Has stammered the loan we couldn't. Then, why are you acting like we're moving in? Sophie's voice. Rose, why are there contractors? Why did you let me plan a housewarming party? Other guests were starting to stare. My mother hurried over. What's going on? I'd like to know that too. Sophie said, tears streaming down her face. Jamie? He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked quickly. Toward his car, Sophie tried to follow but stumbled. My mother caught her arm. What did you say to him? My mother demanded. I shrugged, just the truth for once. Sophie sank into a nearby chair, one hand on her stomach. I don't understand. We picked out paint colors we measured for curtains. How could he lie about this? I caught Eric's eye across the yard. He nodded slightly, my cue to leave before the real storm hit. Happy birthday. Alana, I called out, heading for the gate. Thanks for having me behind. Me? I could hear Sophie's sobs, my mother's soothing murmurs, and the growing whispers of gossip. Phase 1 was complete now for the real surprise. The contractor's boots echoed through the empty house as he showed me the progress we've gutted the master. Bedroom and nursery, as requested. The new fixtures are tomorrow. I ran my hand along the exposed beams, all that remained of Sophie's dream nursery perfect, and the timeline will be done 2 days before their supposed move. In date, he checked his clipboard. Though I still don't understand why we're renovating exactly what they wanted to keep. Sometimes people don't know what they really want, I said, stepping over a pile of vintage crown molding until it's gone. My phone buzzed. Elena calling. I answered on speaker while examining paint samples. Sophie's a mess, she said without preamble. Jamie finally came clean about the gambling. She's staying with your parents. How much does he owe enough that they're selling her engagement ring? Theon he gave her. After, I selected a deep charcoal for the master bedroom. Sophie hated dark colors. Karma's working overtime. This isn't funny, Ivy. She's pregnant and homeless. She's not homeless. She's at mom and dad's, probably being told how none of this is Her fault, a crash from upstairs made me jump, the contractor shouted down. Sorry, just removing that built-in bookcase, where are you? Alana asked suspiciously. Working late, I hung up before she could ask more questions. The next morning, I arrived. At work to find Denise waiting at my desk. You will not believe what I just heard. Try me, Jim's been embezzling from the company small amounts, but it adds up. He thought he could gamble it back before anyone noticed. I sat down my coffee. How much enough? For prison time, she leaned. Closer Hune's cleaning out his desk right now. I walked to the break room, timing it perfectly to refill my cup. As Jamie packed his personal items into a cardboard box, our eyes met across the room. Happy now? He asked quietly. Not yet. I know you're behind this somehow. He stepped closer. The house. The contractors. The audit that caught the missing money proof. His hands clenched around his box. I loved you once, you know. No, I corrected him. You loved what I could give you. Stability, status, a future. Then Sophie offered something more exciting. She needed me. And now I gestured at his box. Does she still need you, an unemployed gambling addict with possible prison? Time security arrived before he could respond. Escorting him out. I watched from my window as he loaded his box into his car, then pulled out my phone to check the contractor's latest update. The Victorian was transforming daily gone, were the vintage details Sophie had swooned over replaced by modern fixtures. And stark colors, the... What do you know? I know Sophie would be devastated to learn about your gambling. Almost as devastated as I was when there you are. Sophie waddled around the corner. What are you two talking about? The house, I said smoothly. Jamie was just telling me about all the special features, the bay window, the vintage fireplace, the original hardwood floors. Isn't it perfect? Sophie beamed. We so lucky the master bedroom has this amazing crown molding that's being replaced. I cut in Jim's head, snapped up what? Oh, you didn't know the contractors are replacing all the crown molding and the hardwood floors, and that vintage fireplace gone by Thursday. Sophie's face fell. But we chose that house because of those features. Jamie, you said nothing was being changed. He shot me a panicked look. There must be some mistake. No mistake? I pulled out my phone, showing them the contractor's latest photos. See, they're making good progress? But why would the sellers? Sophie's voice trailed off as she studied the images. Wait, that's not Jamie. That's not our house. Of course. It is, he said quickly. It's just the angle. No, look at the address in the background. She zoomed in on one photo. That's the Victorian. We lost. Why do you have renovation photos of a house? We don't know. And I watched the color drain from Jay's face. As his house of cards began to collapse, someone else bought it. Has stammered the loan we couldn't. Then, why are you acting like we're moving in? Sophie's voice. Rose, why are there contractors? Why did you let me plan a housewarming party? Other guests were starting to stare. My mother hurried over. What's going on? I'd like to know that too. Sophie said, tears streaming down her face. Jamie? He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked quickly. Toward his car, Sophie tried to follow, but stumbled. My mother caught her arm. What did you say to him? My mother demanded. I shrugged just the truth for once. Sophie sank into a nearby chair, one hand on her stomach. I don't understand. We picked. Out paint colors we measured for curtains. How could he lie about this? I caught Eric's eye across the yard. He nodded slightly my cue to leave before the real storm hit happy birthday. Alana, I called out, heading for the gate. Thanks for having me behind. Me? I could hear Sophie's sobs, my mother's soothing murmurs, and the growing whispers of gossip. Phase 1 was complete now for the real surprise. The contractor's boots echoed through the empty house as he showed me the progress we've gutted the master. Bedroom and nursery, as requested. The new fixtures are tomorrow. I ran my hand along the exposed beams, all that remained of Sophie's dream nursery perfect, and the timeline will be done 2 days before their supposed move. In date, he checked his clipboard. Though I still don't understand why we're renovating exactly what they wanted to keep. Sometimes people don't know what they really want, I said, stepping over a pile of vintage crown molding until it's gone. My phone buzzed, Elena calling. I answered on speaker while examining paint samples. "Sophie's a mess," she said without preamble. "Jamie finally came clean about the gambling. She's staying with your parents. How much does he owe enough that they're selling her engagement ring?" Theon he gave her. After, I selected a deep charcoal for the master bedroom. Sophie hated dark colors. Karma's working overtime. This isn't funny, Ivy. She's pregnant and homeless. She's not homeless. She's at mom and dad's, probably being told how none of this is her fault. A la crash from upstairs made me jump. The contractor shouted down. "Sorry, just removing that built-in bookcase. Where are you?" Alana asked suspiciously. Working late, I hung up before she could ask more questions. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Denise waiting at my desk. "You will not believe what I just heard. Try me, Jim's been embezzling from the company small amounts, but it adds up. He thought he could gamble it back before anyone noticed." I sat down my coffee. "How much enough?" "For prison time," she leaned. "Closer Hune's cleaning out his desk right now." I walked to the break room, timing it perfectly to refill my cup. As Jamie packed his personal items into a cardboard box, our eyes met across the room. "Happy now?" he asked quietly. "Not yet. I know you're behind this somehow." He stepped closer. The house. The contractors. The audit that caught the missing money proof. His hands clenched around his box. "I loved you once, you know." "No," I corrected him. "You loved what I could give you. Stability, status, a future." Then Sophie offered something more exciting. She needed me. And now I gestured at his box. "Does she still need you, an unemployed gambling addict with possible prison?" Time security arrived before he could respond. Escorting him out. I watched from my window as he loaded his box into his car, then pulled out my phone to check the contractor's latest update. The Victorian was transforming daily gone. Were the vintage details Sophie had swooned over replaced by modern fixtures? And stark colors, the garden she'd planned to plant was now a concrete patio. Eric texted, "Saw Jamie being escorted out." "You okay better than okay," I replied. "Coming to see the house later. Someone should witness your descent into supervillainy that evening." Eric walked through the renovation with me, shaking his head at each change. "You're really going scorched earth with this?" They wanted their dream home. I showed him the plans for the industrial-style kitchen, replacing Sophie's hoped-for farmhouse design. Dreams change. Speaking of changes, he pulled out his phone showing me Sophie's latest social media post, a tearful announcement about postponing the housewarming to unforeseen circumstances. Unforeseen. Iskoft, she should have seen everything coming the moment. She decided to sleep with my fiancé, and what about your parents? They're caught in the crossfire? I remembered my mother's voice messages, all about supporting Sophie, understanding Sophie, forgiving Sophie. They chose their side. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was, "Jamie, please, she's pregnant. Just tell me who bought the house. We can work something out." Still taking calls from your ex. Eric peered over my shoulder for long. I blocked the number, then opened my email to approve. The final renovation changes, Eric said carefully. "There's still time to stop this. Sell the house, take the profit, start fresh. Somewhere else." I walked to the bay window. The last original feature left tomorrow. It would be replaced with floor 2. Ceiling, modern glass. "They took everything from me," I said quietly. "My future, my family, my trust. Now I'm taking something back, and after, when the house is done and they're broken." "What then?" Before I could answer, headlights swept across the window. A familiar car pulled into the driveway. Is that Eric moved beside me? Sophie stepped out of her car, staring up at the house. My house with tears streaming down her face. "Showtime," I whispered, heading for the door. "What are you doing here?" I called from the porch, making Sophie jump. "Ivy." She squinted through the darkness. Why are you in our house?" "Your house." I stepped into the light. "That's interesting." "Show me the deed." Sophie's hand went protectively to her stomach. Her default move lately. "The sellers never accepted your offer?" I finished, because they'd already sold it to someone else. Understanding dawned slowly across her face. "No, you didn't." I pulled out my keys, dangling them in the moonlight. "Want a tour?" She followed me inside, gasping. At each renovation, the exposed brick she'd loved was now covered in sleek white paint. The vintage staircase had been replaced with modern floating steps. "You're destroying it," she whispered. I'm making it mine. Eric hung back, watching us circle each. Other like way cats, Sophie's eyes were red-rimmed, her designer dress wrinkled while her voice cracked to hurt me. Why did you sleep with my fiancé? I countered, to hurt me. I loved him. I still love him even after she choked back a sob. Did you get him? Fired too. Jay got himself fired, just like he got himself into gambling debt. He was trying to buy this house for us. She gestured at the gutted rooms. For our family. Your family? I laughed. You mean the family you built on the ruins of mine? Sophie sank onto a dusty contractor's stool. I never meant me to fall in love with him, but you did, and instead of walking away, you took everything. I moved closer. My fiancé, my future, our parents' support. You took it all with a smile, then expected me to celebrate. Your happiness. Mom and Dad still love you. They tolerate me. They love you. The pregnant daughter, the victim, the one who needs protecting. Eric cleared his throat. Ivy, no. I turned back to Sophie. You want to know the best part? Jamie was planning to sell this house behind your back to pay his debts. She shook her head. You're lying. Check his phone. Check the messages from his bookie. Ask him about the company, money he stole. Sophie's face crumpled. Stop it. The perfect life you stole from me. It's falling apart, and I get to watch. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you chose him over me. A loud crash from upstairs made us all jump. The contractor appeared at the top of the stairs. Sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss the nursery. Demolition scheduled for tomorrow. Sophie stood up so quickly she stumbled. Eric caught her arm, destroying the nursery. Her voice was barely a whisper. It's my house. I shrugged. I can do whatever I want with it. She reached for her phone with shaking hands. I'm calling Mom, go ahead. Tell her how the sister she thinks is bitter and lonely actually owns your dream home. Tell her how your perfect husband is a thief and a gambler. Tell her everything. Instead of dialing, Sophie sank to the floor, sobbing. Eric shot me a concerned look. Maybe we should get her out of my house, good idea. But as I moved to help her up, Sophie grabbed my arm. Please, we can fix this, all of it. I'll leave Jamie, I'll tell Mom and Dad the truth. Just please don't take our home. For a moment, I wavered. She looked so small, so broken, my little sister, the one I'd protected since childhood. Then, I remembered finding her in my bed with Jai, remembered her pregnancy announcement at my canceled wedding venue, remembered every family dinner where she played the victim while I was cast as the villain. Your home. I stayed back. This was supposed to be my home with Jai before you took that future and made it yours. Ivy, get out when she didn't move. Erased my voice. Get out. Eric helped her up, guiding her toward the door. She paused in the doorway, one hand on her stomach. You know what's worse than having something stolen from you? She asked quietly. Becoming the kind of person who enjoys stealing from others. The door closed behind them with a final click. I stood in my gutted house listening to Sophie's car start up and drive away. My phone buzzed a text from the contractor. Nursery demolition still in for tomorrow. I stared at the message for a long moment, Sophie's words echoing in my head. Then I typed back, proceed as planned because some wounds run too deep for mercy. The morning of Sophie's housewarming party dawned bright and clear. I watched from my bedroom window as the bulldozer rolled up the driveway right on schedule. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn first. Eric, are you sure about this? Then Eliana Sophie's decorating the house right now. She has no idea. Finally, my mother, please don't do anything foolish today. I didn't respond to any of them. At exactly noon, cars began arriving. I recognized them all, family, friends, colleagues. Sophie had invited everyone to witness her perfect life. Ready? Eric asked, appearing beside me. I straightened my blazer and grabbed the envelope from my desk. Time to crash a party. We walked across the street, just as Sophie was welcoming guests on the front porch. She froze when she saw me. You're not supposed to be here, actually. I smiled. You're not supposed to be here? The bulldozer engine roared to life. Sophie spun around her face, draining of color as it approached the pristine front lawn. What's happening? My mother pushed through the crowd. What have you done? I pulled the papers from my envelope renovating my property. Jamie appeared, looking haggard. What do you mean? Your property? She owns it. Eric's voice carried across the suddenly silent gathering. She bought it. Months ago, Sophie swayed on her feet. But we signed the papers yesterday. The realtor show me. I held out my hand. Show me these papers. Jamie stepped forward. I have them right here, no. Sophie interrupted you, said you had them, but I never saw them. I never actually signed anything. Did I? The bulldozer inched closer to the freshly planted garden. Jamie Sophie's voice. Rose, did you lie about the papers? Too. He backed away. I can explain. Explain what I pulled out. Another document. The gambling, debts, the embezzlement, or how you plan to sell this house. My house to pay it all off. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother pressed a hand to her chest. That's not true, she whispered. Jimmy would never check his phone. I suggested, or better yet, ask his bookie, and right there. I pointed to a man hovering at the edge of the gathering, who quickly turned and hurried away. Jim lunged for his car. But Eric blocked his path, running again. You did this. Jamie snarled at me. You set me up? No, I handed the eviction notice to Sophie. You did this to yourself, just like you did this to her. Sophie stared at the paper, tears splashing onto the legal text. All those renovations? You knew the whole time I bought this house, the day after you announced your pregnancy. I turned to address the stunned crowd. The day I learned my sister and ex-fiancé had been sleeping together for months. Ivy, my mother, stepped forward. This is cruel, cruel, I laughed. Was it cruel when you told me to be happy for them, when you celebrated their betrayal, when you made me the villain for not forgiving them? The bulldozer blade touched the first flower bed. Sophie screamed, Stop it, please. Why should I? I moved closer. You didn't stop. When I begged. When I asked why my sister would do this to me. I'm sorry, she fell to her knees sobbing. I'm so sorry. Please don't destroy our home. It was never your home. I signaled the bulldozer driver. It was my future. You destroyed now. I'm just returning. The favor, Jamie tried to run again, but two men in suits blocked his path. James Fletcher 1 flashed a badge. We need to discuss some financial discrepancies at your former workplace as they LED Jamie away. Sophie crumpled the eviction notice in her. Fists, where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Sophie, don't name your baby after me. She deserves better than that. The crowd parted as I walked. Away, whispers following in my wake. I heard my mother calling my name. Heard Sophie sobs. Heard the bulldozer engine growling. Eric caught up with me at the sidewalk. Well, that was justified. I was going to say intense. He glanced back at the chaos we'd left behind. Feel better. I watched as my family's perfect facade crumbled, just like the house would soon crumble. Sophie being led away by our parents. Jamie in custody, the party guests fleeing the scene. Ask me tomorrow, I said, and walked away from. The ruins of both our dreams behind me. The bulldozer began its work. The demolition dust had barely settled when Elena found me sitting on my front porch watching the sunset behind the partially destroyed Victorian. Everyone's looking for you, she said, settling beside me. Let them look. She handed me a cup of coffee. Jay's being held without bail. Sophie's at the hospital. Stress triggered early contractions. The coffee burned my tongue, but I welcomed the pain. It felt real grounding. Did you know? I said that used to imagine my whole life in this house. Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, kids running up and down those stairs. And now I'm going to sell it as is. I gestured at the demolished garden. The expo's Ed beams, the chaos I'd created. Let someone else build something new from the wreckage. My phone lit up. My mother calling again. This time I answered, Where are you? She demanded, Home. This isn't funny, Ivy. Your sister needs you, no. I said quietly. She doesn't. And neither do you. I hung. Up as Eric's car pulled into the driveway, he carried a box of my old photos, the ones I'd left at my parents' house. Your mom dropped these off at my place, he said. Think she was hoping to find you there. I pulled out a photo. Sophie and me as kids match. In Halloween costumes we used to be. Inseparable people change, no. I crumpled the photo, people reveal who they really are. Ilana's phone buzzed. She read the message, then looked at me carefully. Sophie lost the baby. The words hung in the air like the demolition dust I waited to feel satisfaction. Victory something instead. I felt. Hollow Ivy. Eric touched my arm, talked to us. I wanted them to hurt, like I hurt. I stared at the ruined house. But this isn't what I wanted. What did you want? I don't know anymore. More headlights swept across the lawn as another car approached. Sophie stepped out looking pale and small in her hospital gown. You shouldn't be here, Ilana started, but Sophie held up a hand. I need to say something. I stood facing my sister. Across the debris-strewn yard, she looked at the destruction around us, then back at me. I deserved this, she said softly. All of it. I destroyed your life because I was jealous you had everything, the perfect fiancé, the perfect future I wanted to prove. I could take it all away. Sophie let me finish. She wrapped her arms around herself. I told myself it was love that Jamie and I were meant to be. But really, I just wanted to win, to be the sister everyone chose for once. They always chose you, no she. Shook her head. They needed to take care of me because I was a mess. But you are the strong one, the successful one, the one they were proud of. I looked at the house, really looked at it. The demolished parts, the renovations, the ruins I'd created. To make them suffer, I became exactly what they thought I was. I whispered, bitter, vengeful, cruel, we both did. Sophie wiped her eyes. I lost everything today, Jamie the baby, our parents' trust. But the worst part, I lost you long before that, the day I decided. My jealousy was more important than my sister Eric and Ilana backed away, giving us space in the growing darkness. Sophie and I stood among the ruins of both our lives. I can't forgive you, I said finally. I know. But I don't want to hate you anymore. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. What happens now? I looked at the bulldozer, still waiting for tomorrow's demolition at the house that had become a monument to revenge rather than healing. Now we say it, we both start over separately, will you? Ever talk to me again maybe someday when it doesn't hurt to look at you? She turned to leave, then paused for what it's worth. I'm sorry, not because I got caught or because everything fell apart, but because I broke something that can never be fixed. I watched her drive away, then turn to Eric and Eliana, call the contractor, tell them to stop the demolition. You're keeping the house. Eric asked, no. I took one last look at the Victorian, my dream home, my instrument of revenge, my praison of bitterness. I'm going to restore it. Not for Sophie, not for revenge, but for me. Then I'm selling it and moving somewhere new. Running away. Ilana asked. No, I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Moving forward because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding yourself from the ruins others left behind.